Welcome to my channel. This video is for a Valentine's wreath. I'm finishing and decorating this wreath. If you haven't done so, please subscribe and tap the bell for notifications on my uploads and live streams. Where I left off is I am doing the sign. You see I tore the bow off that came on it. I didn't really like it. So I'm just adding some chenille stems to the back, and I'm using hot glue and E6000 glue just to make sure that they're nice and secure and they stay on. I wasn't even going to chance using a staple gun because my staples are too thick and I know they would go through the signs. It's happened too many times. Right here I am taking a piece of chipboard, cut it pretty small, and I'm just hot gluing it to the chenille stem, and then I'm going back over the top of it with hot glue just to protect it and keep it on there, just make it nice and secure. And I'm doing 3 chenille stems. You can do 2 or you can do 4. So now I'm going to do a small bow on this sign since I took the other one off, and I'm just making this with the 5/8 inch Valentine's ribbons. I made my tail 6 inches long and the loops are 5 inches, and I'm just doing 2 loops and 2 tails with this ribbon. Now I'm going to build underneath that with this red and white gingham ribbon, and I'm just using the top bow as a guide on how big to make the loops and tails. And I made those tails just a little bit longer. You can do them any length you want. Don't forget to twist the ribbon when you're making the loops. You make that first loop and then you twist the ribbon before you make your second loop. Now instead of going over this with a chenille stem or something in the middle, I'm taking another piece of that gingham ribbon and just tying a knot. You want to pull that really tight and then make a knot in it in the center. Just gives it a different look. Where I'm pulling that tight, just like I'm tying it just like you would at the beginning of tying a shoelace, but instead of doing the bunny ears, I am doing a knot in the center. So I'm cutting off that other tail, and here I'm making the knot, and you just want to pull that really tight, and then you can kind of move your loops and tails however you want them. Kind of have to move them around a little bit, shape them a little bit more. And then I'm also going to add just a touch of hot glue in that knot just to make sure the loops don't come undone. See, I'm just pushing that in there, just putting a dab of hot glue in there. So now I'm going to take some twine and just make some loops, and I'm going to hot glue that to the sign. When I pulled that bow off, it did kind of take off the finish a little bit, so I have to make sure that's nice and covered. So I'm doing a twine bow in the back of this bow. So first I'm putting this one, and then I'm going to make some smaller loops and have them going the other direction, and that's just going to make a nice little background for that bow that I just made, and then it'll also cover up all that mess. Now that, if you see, I've got a finger protector on to help from getting burnt. I got those at DollarTree. Now I'm just gluing my bow on there. You don't want to make it too big where it covers up the writing, but I thought it turned out really cute. Now you can take these little heart picks and you could glue them to the back of your sign so they're just sticking out different directions. That's one way you can do it. I'm going to glue some of these onto the sign just to give the sign some different dimension. When you pull off that pick, make sure that it's loose and it'll come off easy. If not, you'll want to cut it off. Otherwise, if you pull it out, it will just mess up your heart. So you see that one I cut off. And I'm doing hot glue and E6000 glue just to make sure they stay on nice and well. And I'm using 2 different ones there, the puffy one and then the one that's hollow in the center. Don't be afraid to experiment with these hearts and these signs, adding stuff. There I also added a different heart. That's some table scatter that I also got at DollarTree, and so I just used E6000 to glue that on there. So just move your sign around and see where you like it best on the wreath. These are pretty big signs, so they're going to take up quite a bit of the wreath if you're using a 14-inch like this one. And then you just want to take the chenille stems through between the mesh. You don't want to go through the mesh, you want to go between it, and then make sure that there's a wire between the 2 chenille stems. Give them a couple of twists and turn it over. Make sure it's nice and snug and that the sign is where you want it. And then once you get all of them on there, you want to go ahead and twist those chenille stems good and then wrap it around the wreath form so they're not sticking out everywhere. You want to kind of hide those and camouflage them like I'm doing here. Next, I'm going to add the bow. I already made a video for this bow, so I will put a card across the top of the video there that you can click on it. And you can either attach this on top of the mesh, or you can move the mesh, kind of separate the mesh like I'm doing here, and then attach the bow so the bow is kind of sunken in a little bit. I didn't want this wreath to be real deep. I want to kind of stay around the 4-inch depthness, so that's why I did that, and I think it turned out really well. I really like the way it looks on there. And you want to do the chenille stems the same way you did with the sign. Now I'm going to add some picks through the wreath, and I'm just sitting that on there so I don't smash the bow, so it keeps the bow from being flat on the table, so when I flip it over like that. And I'm using cable ties to attach or secure the pick to the wreath form. You can use chenille stems, floral wire, whatever you've got. Just make sure you do at least 2 places. And you could even add a little hot glue to the wire wreath form and the pick where they're touching, just to keep them secure if you needed to, if you felt like it was going to come loose. You just don't want those picks to be sticking out on the back side of the wreath. You want to make sure they're flat and even. Now I'm using these little heart ornaments, and I'm just simply taking a small piece of chenille stem through that hanger on the heart, and I am just attaching it over the ruffle grouping in the center. And you could do these in between the mesh or over the mesh like I'm doing here. Now I'm also going to show you how to attach these foam roses. If you wanted to, you would just hot glue the chenille stem and then push it into the back of that rose. Or these little grapevine hearts, you would just wrap a chenille stem through that grapevine and attach it to the wreath. Very easy. Now I'm going to add some more of these ribbons just throughout the wreath, and I did about 8 inches, and I'm just crossing it over itself, and then I will just kind of bunch it up in the center and take a piece of chenille stem and wrap around that and just add it to your wreath. You can do it again over one of the ruffle groupings, or you could do it between the mesh, however you wanted to do it. I think those look really cute. So lastly, I'm going to add some Deco mesh tubing. Now you can run this around your wreath, just keep attaching it every few inches. I would suggest doing that immediately after doing the Deco mesh and before you decorate it. But I'm going to make some loops. So I'm doing about 24 inches of Deco mesh tubing and making 3 loops and some little tails hanging off. So you can make these as big or as small as you want. You can just use this as a guide for how big I'm doing it. And then I will just run a chenille stem there in the center, twist it really tight, and then attach it to my wreath form. You can do it again over the mesh ruffles, or you can do it in between the mesh. So however you want to do it, and you can add several different colors. You can stick with one color like this, and do as much or as little as you want. So I'm just sticking it in there. Again, you want to twist that good, and then make sure that you push that chenille stem down good on the back side of the wreath. You don't want anything sticking out and scratching a door or scratching a person. So I'm just going to make a few of these and scatter them throughout the wreath. Just make sure everything you attach is attached to the wreath form or attached to a grouping or something so it won't fall off. And here's how they look. I think it just adds another texture, another element. It really makes a wreath stand out. I love different elements on a wreath. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, share, like, subscribe, tap the bell for notifications. Be kind with your comments and be kind to others. Thank you.